Navigating sex as a Christian can be difficult in this world because the world just has different standards. Today we're going to look at the picture that God has for us when it comes to sex, how He created it and how He created it to be good. So welcome to our Unstuck series, and this is going to help us to actually look at how we look at Christianity and sex and how we should navigate this world. Now for this, I've got this picture of one of my friends went 4x4 riding the other day and actually got stuck in the mud. Now the perfect thing to get stuck out of mud, to get stuck out of like gunk and muck, the best way to do that in 4x4 is actually a thing called a winch. And a winch you would actually disconnect and you'd pull it forward and you'd connect it to a tree, something that is solid. And it has a little motor and it'll start pulling the car out of the muck. And we really trust that today, that somewhere in your life where you might feel stuck, especially when it comes to sex, and that there's going to be a truth we're going to connect to. And it's going to start pulling you out of this muck. Because in Galatians 5 verse 1, it says this beautiful thing. It says that Christ has set us free, to live a free life. So take your stand. Never again let anyone put a harness of slavery on you. You see, Christ has made us to live free. Now, when it comes to sex, how does sex make us stuck in our relationships, in our relationship with God even? Well, Tim Keller, he writes this book called The Meaning of Marriage, and if you ever want to get married, read this book, so good. And he says this: even if you're not legally married to someone, when you're having sex with them, you find yourself feeling marriage-like feelings or ties to them. Feeling like the other person has an obligation to you, but of course the other person has no legal obligation or moral or social responsibility to even call you back in the morning. This incongruity leads to jealousy and hurt feelings, obsessiveness. And if these two people are having sex and aren't married, they are making it harder for them to break up more than it should be. This leads to people staying trapped in relationships that are not good because of feelings that are somehow now connected to each other. If you haven't noticed, this is pretty much every episode of Friends, right? When it comes to moral sexuality, it is mixed with these guys having sex with a bunch of different people. And it is not helpful. Why? Because we're actually connecting ourselves in a different way, in a very beautiful way, which is made for good things, but sometimes is used for bad. Because the moment you misuse sex, that becomes the dysfunctional base of your relationship. Is because you're connected to someone in a very deep emotional sense, but not yet committed to them in a promise sense. I mean, one of the things, not just sex, but pornography plays a role in that. People are addicted to this thing. It's a way that you can become addicted. And the major problem is pornography. I mean, pornography, just by the way, pornography is traffic at this moment is more, on the internet, is more than Amazon, Netflix, Twitter, and Instagram combined. The porn industry actually makes more money than the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, and as well as the major baseball league in America. That's 4 of the greatest and biggest sports. Now, why would you ask this? It's because people are trying to find something in it. You know that pornography actually does this. It actually has a massive effect on your mental health. First of all, pornography numbs your feelings. It isolates you. People become isolated when they're bound to this thing. You actually believe or start experiencing more aggression, increased aggression. And it also distorts your beliefs when it comes to a good perspective of a healthy relationship. You see, porn runs on this one thing, is that pornography asks the question, what can I get? Because it's all about choosing what I want, not about what the other person needs. And usually people go into a relationship with that kind of thinking what they can get out. And the basis of a relationship isn't asking what I can get out. It's asking, what can I give to the other person? Now that we know the muck we're stuck in, where our 4x4 wheels are spinning, what now? How do we get out of this muck? What is the answer? Well, it's firstly to understand this, is that sex is good. Sex is good. People think Christianity, Christians, they have a small picture of sex. You know, people think that when they think of Christianity, we have these people preaching, saying that, no, don't have sex before you're married, like kind of an Amish type of thinking, you know, that sex is bad and sex is only to make babies and that's about it. The truth is, we actually as Christians have a big picture of sex because sex was created by God. Yes, you heard me correct. Sex has been created by God. I mean, even in Genesis, it says this. God created man in his own image. He created him in the image of God. He created them male and female. And then he said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth. I think God wasn't worried the moment that Adam looked at Eve and they actually started having sex because, I mean, he created the parts, number one. And number two is that he actually told them to multiply and fill the earth. You see, God created sex because sex is good. It is powerful. It's something that can make your relationship strong. But there's three things that makes it powerful. And I want to chat to you about those quick three things. The first thing is this. The very simple one and the very logical one is to multiply. I mean, for the human race to continue, for your family to continue, for you to have kids, you need to have sex to multiply and fill this earth, which is a beautiful and a good thing. And the second one, this is where it gets a bit more deeper, is that sex is not just a physical act, but sex is an emotional act. It is actually a way that you get to know one another and know one another deeply. You see, sex has been created for you to have a deep connection with someone. Genesis 4 verse 1 explains this so well. It says, now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and then they conceived their child Cain. So Adam knew Eve really well, right? And then they conceived their child Cain. Why is this? Because sex is not just a physical act. It is a deep emotional knowing of someone else. It is a place where we get to know the intimate of someone else, where we get to know them. And just by the way, this is a very good thing because a relationship needs this. And to make this connection, and this connection that you are deeper connected with someone, is not built for just a picture of dating, because it asks for something more. Because this deep kind of love asks for a promise as well. It asks for a commitment, a covenant. Why? Because sex, just by the way, finds it's actually like the climax of a relationship, right? It's the point of a relationship. It's the moment that you're extremely vulnerable and extremely true, or fully known and fully loved. And you see, this moment that we have sex, it is a moment that we open ourselves up to be vulnerable to the other person. And the problem with having sex outside of the picture of marriage is that you're vulnerable with yourself. And in this moment, there's no commitment for the other person to actually be there. And this is the promise that God has for us, to saying that if we use sex in the right way, if we use it for the way that He created it, which is our third point, is for marriage. I mean, sex is a life-giving, powerful thing when used in the right place. It can either build you up because it's powerful, and believe it or not, sex can break you down because it is powerful. The question is, are you using it correctly? Now, the best illustration to use this is my fireplace at home. Man, I love my fireplace at home, especially in the winter when it gets really cold. Eventually, you'll start putting off the heaters and put on the fireplace, especially with electricity. You definitely want to run the fireplace, much more cheaper. But the picture of this fireplace, it is beautiful. The moment that it's in the fireplace is in the fire. It's making a lot of heat. It's warming up the house. It's bringing life to the house. It is a beautiful thing. But the moment I take that fire and I start making this fire on my carpet, it's not bringing life. It's bringing destruction. It's making everything smoky and smell bad. It's actually burning down things in my life. And this is what God is saying when it comes to sex. He's saying this picture of sex is made for something more than just burning the carpet. It's made for something beautiful to bring life into your relationship. I mean, Paul goes to the extreme in 1 Corinthians 6 verse 9. And he says this, don't you know that the unrighteous will not enter the kingdom of heaven? Very harsh. And he starts explaining, he says, do not be deceived. No sexually immoral people, idolaters, adulterers, males having sex with males, none of these thieves, greedy people, drunkards, verbally abusive people, even swindlers will enter the kingdom of heaven. Very harsh statement that Paul's making. But the reason he makes a statement is to say, guys, this thing is not something we joke about because it is so, so powerful. But then he gives us an answer. He gives us an answer to this question. And he says this, and some of you used to be like this. But here's the thing. He goes on to say, you were washed, you were sanctified, and you were justified in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord, and by the Spirit of God. See, we need to understand this thing when it comes to sex and how we navigate it as Christians. We've got to know that sex is good. It's not a bad thing. And sex is built for a great place, which is marriage. It brings life to your married life because it needs a covenant. It needs a promise. And here's the thing. Maybe if you've messed up in your past or maybe you're busy messing up, I want to tell you this, there is so much hope for you because Jesus says that you were cleansed, you were made new by Him. It is through Him that we are made new. And I want to invite you that if you're looking at your life and you're asking the question, yes, Brent, I've given my life to Christ and I've, asked for forgiveness of this thing, but what now? What's next? How do I go further? Well, very simple. I think that Christ has forgiven you and He has forgiven you. Definitely. But I think the next step for you would be this very simple thing. It's time for you to forgive other people and yourself. To forgive people that have maybe hurt you in the past. Maybe that pain was not your choice. It was someone else's choice. The next step is to forgive others, but also to forgive yourself because Christ has forgiven you. And I want to encourage you to take that step when it comes to this picture. So how do we navigate sex as Christians? Very simple. We know that it is good and it's built for the right place. And the moment I can start living for that and not living to not try and have sex, but actually keep it for something that is better, that is when I start living freely in what Christ has called me to be. If this helped you, remember to subscribe and actually get more videos through this process, but also share this with your friends if it helped you because it'll help them grow in their relationship with God. Know that you've been set free and we can't wait to see you next time. Cheers.